the air with college students nationwide under arrest, elite schools under pressure with those pro-Palestinian protests now going global. Police clearing away camps, barriers going up, all of it casting a shadow on graduation season. We're live outside the university at the heart of it all, where professors want to punish the school president. Then breaking in maybe just the last 30 minutes, a new bill out of Tennessee that would let teachers carry guns in schools. Parents may not even know if their kid's teacher has one. The wild videos we're just now getting in of protests at the State House in just a second. We're also live outside Donald Trump's trial with new details about how these so-called catch and kill schemes worked from the ultimate tabloid insider, what the jury's learning from David Pecker, and where that partial gag order on the former president stands. Then, in tonight's original, the terrifying footage of a woman apparently being kidnapped, how police use this doorbell cam footage to catch the suspect. And with a huge foreign aid package set to pass the Senate, we're going to get a gut check on the state of House Republicans from a top lawmaker who's calling it quits after this year. In tonight's Newsmaker, why she's leaving and what she wants to do before she goes. That's later in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and tonight protests at campuses spreading around the world and getting more intense with students, university officials, police clashing on how to handle a situation we are all watching unfold. Right now, you're seeing more than 100 NYU students and faculty members gathering in New York in just the last hour. At the University of Michigan here, you see police cleaning up some of these tents, this sort of encampment that was put in place. In Seattle, you've got high school students protesting too, and then some other places on this map, schools where we've been seeing something similar play out recently because of tensions over the war in the Middle East. This is a fight that's happening not just in the U.S., but around the world, with some students at Sydney University staging their own encampment. The University of Michigan says 9 people have been arrested there. They're upping security. At NYU, 120 people detained last night, according to officials. Police say while they were trying to clear everybody out, protesters hit them with bottles. You've got barriers being set up around some campuses. And students, listen, they've got mixed feelings.
I feel like they treat students as targets sometimes.
I think it's good that, they're trying to keep this all under control.
Because this is during finals, so certainly it causes disruption to our review sessions.
And over at the school that really became the epicenter of these protests, Columbia University, you've got some faculty members preparing a resolution that would give the school's president effectively a slap on the wrist, but it would make clear their displeasure. That's after she authorized the NYPD to clear out the encampment, you see it here from the air, that had been put in place. Valerie Castro is out at Columbia University in New York. They've actually switched over to hybrid learning, so some students can show up online rather than in person. This is having a big impact on school right as we're about to hit graduation season.
Yeah, Hallie, that's just one of the measures now in place, that hybrid learning model for the rest of the spring semester. Here at Columbia University, they are also implementing campus ID checks. You have to show your campus ID if you want to cross the gates to get onto the property. NYU University says they're also implementing enhanced security measures for students to enter buildings there. And as you mentioned, this all comes as graduation is less than a month away. It's scheduled for May 15th here at Columbia University. We've reached out to the university to find out if those plans are changing, because where the large commencement ceremony is typically held is in the same location where that large encampment is set up. The university has not gotten back to us at this point. So I imagine that they are looking at that location, considering moving it, considering altering that in some way. Students say they're not sure what to think. Take a listen to a senior we spoke to earlier today, an architecture student. Take a listen.
It's been emotional. I suspect graduation will look a bit different this year. I think right now we're in a moment where everyone has to make a conscious decision about whether traditions are worth sacrificing to a greater cause.
Hallie, we did hear from a student who is inside that encampment, and she says she may forego her graduation. She says she may walk out of this without her diploma. She is a senior. She says if that's what it takes to stay there until those demands are met. Hallie.
You mentioned that this resolution is getting worked on, the one to censure the school president, by Columbia's chapter of the American Association of University Professors. They don't want her to resign necessarily. It sounds like they want to send a message.
Yeah, that resolution, the resolution of censure was drafted over the weekend. That was in response to the university president calling for the NYPD to come on campus to break up that encampment that resulted in those arrests last week. They say that that was a violation of academic freedom. They say that was a violation of students' rights. And they also say that, quote, we are calling on a recommitment to our core values on the part of our president, her administration, and the Board of Trustees. Again, they are not calling for her resignation. However, several U.S. House Republicans from New York wrote a letter yesterday doing just that, calling for her to step down. Hallie.
Valerie Castro live for us there in New York. Thank you. A little further south in downtown Manhattan, Donald Trump's criminal trial is giving us a look we've never seen before inside one of America's biggest tabloids, thanks to the testimony from the guy that you're about to see right here, David Pecker, former head of the National Enquirer, walking the jury through the close-knit relationship he had with the guy he called Donald, along with his relationship with Donald's former fixer, Michael Cohen. Pecker, at one point, describing this meeting he had when the two men asked him to be the campaign's eyes and ears. You see it here. Talking through this unwritten, confidential agreement to promote stories that would help then-candidate Trump and embellish ones that would hurt his opponents, like Ted Cruz, like Marco Rubio. Remember, his 2016 opponents at the time. Pecker also explained how these catch-and-kill schemes worked to try to save Mr. Trump from embarrassment. Like when Pecker paid $30,000 to a doorman who allegedly made up a story about Mr. Trump. That's the catch. And then never running it. That's the kill. According to Pecker, Cohen said that made the boss, meaning Donald Trump, very pleased. I want to bring in Rahima Ellis, who's outside the courthouse, along with Brian Stelter, an expert really on all things David Pecker. Rahima, let me start with you here, because what's interesting, the details that Pecker gave about Donald Trump and his money, really painting this picture of somebody who was like kind of a micromanager on how this money was being spent, something that is going to set up the state's case, the prosecution's case moving forward, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing that he did in all of that was talked about Michael Cohen's relationship in all of that, saying that Donald Trump had introduced him to Michael Cohen and made it very clear that if Michael Cohen called him and said that he was calling on behalf of Donald Trump, indeed he was calling on behalf of Donald Trump, that he was going to be not just his lawyer, but his intermediary, you said, so to speak, and that it was important. And so going forward, it seems like this is something that's very crucial for the prosecution. As you know, Michael Cohen is a conflicted witness for some, if you will, saying because he's already been convicted of lying. But so he will be attacked for that. But David Pecker was very clear on the stand today. He is someone who has been given immunity in this case for his testimony, and it's expected that he is telling all there is to tell in the way that it is telling the truth. And the truth that he was telling on that stand today is that there is a clear connection, a strong connection between Donald Trump, Michael Cohen, and the information that David Pecker got from Michael Cohen.
What's also just so fascinating on this, right, today, because, Brian, you've covered the tabloid world for years. The tabloids do not work the way that, like, mainstream news organizations work, right? Some of these stories are bananas bizarro. Like, I think about, I covered Ted Cruz back in 2016. Right. There was one story that was like, a couple stories that were like Ted Cruz's dad had links to the JFK assassination, just crazy stuff. Another, a 2-page spread, 5 romps that will destroy Ted Cruz. I mean, these were the headlines out there. Yep. Senator Cruz is telling our Hill team today he is not interested in revisiting ancient history. It's like 8 years ago, Brian, and it is this really rare inside look at how clickbait basically is made.
That's right. I've never seen anything like this. The Enquirer has had so many secrets, and they've kept them so hidden until now. David Pecker's never had to talk about this publicly until today, and it's not journalism at all. It is more like advertising. Think about Pecker as a great advertiser, a marketer on behalf of Donald Trump. He talked about knowing Trump since the 80s. They became closer when Trump became a presidential candidate, and Pecker really loved that proximity to power. He loved being in the mix, having influence, using his magazine to flatter his friends and punish his perceived enemies. He told Trump that he would be Trump's eyes and ears, looking out for negative stories and then burying those stories, and Michael Cohen was the go-between. It really is a blast from the past, Hallie, but it's not a very pleasant blast from the past. It's a reminder of how sketchy and even sleazy some of these stories were back in 2015 and 2016.
What's interesting is, remember, the defense attorneys for the former former president, said, hey, you're going to hear a lot of salacious stuff, right? Don't worry about the salacious piece of it. Like, that's not relevant here. What is relevant is the way that prosecutors are trying to cast this as more than just a hush money trial. They're trying to say that this was actually illegal election interference more broadly, like a conspiracy. How does Pecker's testimony play into that piece?
I do think that Pecker has helped the prosecution on that front, at least a little bit today, by acknowledging that he tried to describe this as a mutual benefit, that both sides were benefiting. And the prosecutors pushed back and said, no, it was really Trump. It was the campaign that was benefiting from this. And even though we're talking about what happened in 2016, it is relevant today. It's relevant to 2024 and beyond, because as politically fatigued and burned out as so many of us are, the same tactics and techniques that Trump used back then are still being employed today. He just doesn't do it with the National Enquirer anymore. But think about the way that some of his rivals are smeared. Back in 2016, the National Enquirer said Hillary Clinton's close to death. She has 6 months to live. What do they say now about Biden? What do they say now about the current president? It's the same kinds of narratives that we see from Trump world, but they're just laundered in a different way now.
Rahima, let me go to you, because as much as we can be on pins and needles for anything in this, I think folks are related to the judge's decision on this gag order. It sounds like the judge was kind of getting frustrated a bit with the defense as they were walking through what the former president has the right to say and about whom.
Yeah, he was getting very frustrated. All of that kind of frustration came at the beginning of the court day. The jurors were not in the courtroom, so they were not privy to this kind of exchange that the judge had. And he was talking about the gag order in so much as the prosecution was asking for a hearing and for the judge to make a ruling on what it is alleging the violations that Donald Trump has made in the judge's order not to talk about jurors, et cetera. And at one point, the judge was saying to the attorney for Donald Trump, it seems like your client is manipulating some of these retweets that he has done. And Blanchett, who is Donald Trump's attorney, said, I wouldn't use the word manipulation. But the judge said that seems to apply to one of these particular tweets. And at that point, the Judge Merchan said, you are losing credibility. You are losing all credibility with this court. I have to tell you. And we should share with you what Donald Trump had to say at the end of court today about the gag order. Take a listen.
We have a gag order, which to me is totally unconstitutional. I'm not allowed to talk, but people are allowed to talk about me. I'd love to talk to you people. I'd love to say everything that's on my mind, but I'm restricted because I have a gag order.
And the judge is saying that restriction is limited. You can talk about the judge, but you can't talk about the jurors in this particular case. And so we will see what will happen. The judge has taken this question of whether or not Donald Trump has violated the gag order under advisement. He has given no indication as to when he will rule on that. Hallie?
Rahima Ellis, Brian Stelter, we're so glad to both of you for helping us unpack all of what we saw in court today. Thank you so much. More, of course, in the days to come. Let's take you down south, because President Biden, he is on the road tonight, maybe hoping to make the state of Florida more of a battleground again, or if not, at least the battleground zero for abortion access, with that state's 6-week ban set to go into effect just days from now.
It was Donald Trump who ripped away the rights of freedom of women in America. It'll be all of us who restore those rights for women in America.
It's going to be up to voters in that state come November, with a proposed amendment to the ban on the ballot. And Team Biden hopes that'll drive out Democrats to the polls this fall. Yamiche Alcindor is joining us now. This is not anymore these days, right? We're a long way from what we were at the turn of the century here in 2000. Donald Trump won this state twice. It's just not seen as the swing state it used to be. And yet here's the president in a critical campaign year on a critical campaign issue hitting that turf. Talk us through the strategy.
Well, President Biden really wanted to make sure that voters in Florida heard from him in particular. We've seen the vice president out on a number of trips since Roe v. Wade was overturned. She's really become the most prominent voice on the administration on this topic. But campaign aides told me just in the last hour that they wanted the president to come here because they wanted him specifically to be attacking Donald Trump on this issue. And he did do that for a number of minutes, including saying that he was responsible for Roe v. Wade being overturned. He also said that this isn't a states' rights issue, that this is really a woman's rights issue. And he said that voters should hold Donald Trump accountable. So this is really President Biden wanting to lean in on an issue that voters, at least in polls, show they really trust him more than Donald Trump on. And of course, we've seen a number of issues where he's struggling on. But on the issue of abortion, it's a winning issue according to voters and according to our polls. Hallie?
It's also this split screen moment here, because while former President Trump is, like, again this week decrying his inability to be on the campaign trail because he's in court, President Biden is on the trail. We know, and you've talked about this, right, based on polling, that Democrats see this as an advantageous issue for them. They're trying to add some urgency here, Yamiche, as it sounds like they are, what, stacking the chairs behind you, friend? Clean enough?
Hallie, you've been on the campaign trail a lot of times. The president left several hours ago, so they are trying to get home now. But I'm sure you can still hear me. But yes, there are people stacking a number of things behind me. But I want to tell you, as you said, this is quite a split screen. I mean, President Biden wanted to come to Florida. Of course, it's not just because this six-week ban is set to go into effect on May 1st. It's also Donald Trump's home state. He might be here if he wasn't on trial in New York. Of course, having to be in New York, and the judge, of course, saying that he can't leave that courtroom and can't leave that trial, or unless he be arrested. So President Biden wanted to also come here and make that case. I also talked to some people who are in favor of abortion rights, and they say this really shows that President Biden has the time to deal with the nation's issues, has the time to talk about the campaign, while President Trump is still dealing with his own legal problems, Hallie.
Yamiche Alcindor, we will let you clear on out there. Don't let the door hit you on your way back home. Thank you so much, Yamiche. Appreciate it, breaking down all of it there in Florida. Back home here in Washington, maybe as soon as a few hours from now, the Senate could vote on that big bill that includes a potential ban on TikTok. Senators today are going through the procedural dotting of the I's and crossing of the T's before one final vote. But here's the thing. Remember, even if this does get passed in the Senate, and even if President Biden signs this bill like he says he would, that doesn't mean TikTok would go away immediately. It's not just going to poof right off your phone. The Chinese-based company that owns TikTok would have at least 9 months to sell it off. Not that TikTok's okay with that. Internal memos obtained by NBC News suggest they're going to take this to court if it comes to that. Sahil Kapoor is joining us now. So, like, what is the deal? Tonight, tomorrow, are senators going to vote to ban TikTok? Because that's a big deal.
That'd be a pretty neat trick if they could just make it go poof off the phone, Hallie. But you're right, that's unlikely. So the situation on the Senate right now is just a few hours ago, it voted by an overwhelming vote of 80-19 to move forward with this bill. That means it's a fait accompli. It will pass. The only question is when. There are some conservative senators who object to this measure, specifically the $60 billion for aid to Ukraine, which they fought against for a long time. And some of them are going to try to delay this and use their time to, speak on the floor and prevent an immediate final vote. One GOP senator I spoke to recently predicted that it would be about 9 or 10 p.m. when the Senate starts voting on final passage. So the hope is still to get it done tonight. And one man who is very happy about this is Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader who has been an ardent supporter of Ukraine aid, trying to push back against what he calls the isolationist forces within his party. We were at a press conference with him earlier this afternoon, and he blamed two men for holding things up among Republicans. Let's play what he said.
Demonization of Ukraine began by Tucker Carlson, who, in my opinion, ended up where he should have been all along, which is interviewing Vladimir Putin. And then our nominee for president didn't seem to want us to do anything at all. That took months to work our way through it.
A rare critique there from McConnell on Trump and his waffling on Ukraine aid, how that impacted Republicans and kind of delayed this process. McConnell also said he believes that Republicans have turned the corner on the isolationist forces within his party. Whether that's actually true or is wishful thinking, Hallie, remains to be seen.
Sahil Kapoor live for us there on the Hill. Keep us posted, Sahil. Thank you much. Out west now, police in Washington state in just the last couple of minutes say they are making progress, in their words, in the manhunt for a former school police officer and now accused child rapist who they think may be involved in the deaths of two women and the kidnapping of a baby boy. The person of interest in a Monday shooting outside a local elementary school that left his ex-wife dead. They say he's also potentially connected to the death of his current girlfriend, whose body was found at his home the same day. Police believe he then drove off with that little boy, 1-year-old, named Roman. Officials say they think he's making his way toward Mexico, but then police in Portland say they think he was spotted in their city overnight. He should be considered armed and dangerous. Let's bring in NBC's Elwin Lopez, who's following this one for us. What are we learning from police in just the last couple of minutes? This news conference that I think is even wrapping up as we speak about where they think he might be going.
Yeah, Hallie, so that manhunt for that former police officer continues. We were hoping to hear something different here, but that is not what we heard. We're getting a full picture of how we got to this exact moment. We have to go back to earlier this year in February. Elias Huizar pleaded not guilty to child rape. The court documents allege he sexually assaulted an underage girl while she was sleeping at his home. That home is one that he shares with another teenager that he met when he was a school resource officer at her middle school. They shared a child together. That baby was 9 months old at the time that this alleged assault happened. Fast forward to Monday, he was set to appear in court, but instead officials say that same day he shot and killed his ex-wife outside of an elementary school. That school was placed on lockdown. The suspect fled the scene, but later that day, police were able to get a search warrant, went into his home, and that is where they found his girlfriend dead. Officials believe he also kidnapped that one-year-old boy. That child shares his last name, but police have not confirmed whether they are related or not. Now, that suspect is being accused of killing not one, but 2 women, taking off with that one-year-old boy. Police say he was spotted in Portland in a black sedan is what they believe. They say that he is armed and dangerous and headed towards Mexico. And again, Hallie, we were expecting to hear something different in this press conference, hoping that he gets caught. It's been 24 hours now, and FBI and the U.S. Marshals are looking for him as well. Hallie.
So much concern for the health and safety of that little boy. Elwin Lopez, thank you very much. We got to get to some breaking news tonight. Really dramatic scenes coming out of Tennessee at the State House there. That's after lawmakers passed a bill that lets teachers carry concealed guns in public schools. Want to show you some of this. This is just moments ago in Nashville there. You see people holding signs, demonstrators chanting. Apparently one of them was reportedly kicked out. This bill is coming 1 year after that horrific mass shooting at a school in Nashville that killed the 6 people at the Covenant School you see here. Liz Kreutz is following this for us tonight, and this all has developed and escalated in just really the last 30 minutes to an hour. Once it was passed, it still has to be signed by the governor. It's not a done deal yet, but we're already seeing some of the reaction tonight.
Yeah, Hallie, it's a very controversial piece of legislation here passed by the Republican-led legislature, 68 yes to 28 no's. And it is on the governor's desk now. The Republican governor is expected to sign it or at least allow it to go into law. And you saw those pictures there. It's turned into a very contentious scene at the state capitol with protesters there on the ground holding signs that say shame. One kid is better than all the guns, chanting blood on your hands. This led to the House Speaker there to order the state troopers to clear the gallery. And this just hits at one of the most contentious issues right now in our country is how to deal with gun violence and school shootings. And those who support this legislation believe that more guns will protect kids. But many of those out protesting, Democrats, parents, students, say that it is just too dangerous to have those guns on campus. Here is what one parent had to say. Take a listen.
We don't want guns. The teachers don't want guns. The majority of people do not want teachers to have firearms in our schools. The goal is to get firearms away from schools, not put them in the schools. So we showed up today to apply pressure to our representatives, and lo and behold, it really didn't do a whole lot.
So what happens here, Hallie, is teachers are going to have to get approval by law enforcement and the school to be able to carry a gun. They will have to follow additional requirements. They'll have to have a valid handgun carry permit, undergo a background check, complete 40 hours of additional training, and pass a psychological evaluation. But those opposed to this feel like that does not go far enough, and it puts too much responsibility on teachers. Parents do not have to be notified either if the teacher of their student has a gun, Hallie.
Liz Kreutz, thank you very much for jumping on that developing story for us tonight. We'll be watching it, of course, in the hours to come. Plus, in the hours on this show to come, when we come back, caught on camera, the potentially life-saving moment involving a doorbell cam and a potential kidnapping. Look at that. We've got more in just a second. Plus, the new warning from the CDC today on the price some people pay to look younger for longer. Photos. Number one, the Department of Justice now set to pay nearly $140 million to the victims of disgraced sports doctor Larry Nassar over that botched FBI investigation, failing to do something more about warnings around the convicted abuser. The Justice Department now calls that fundamental errors. Remember, Michigan State University agreed to pay $500,000 to victims in 2018, and USA Gymnastics and the U.S. Olympic Committee agreed to pay $380 million in 2021. Number 2, a Russian court now rejecting a new appeal from the Wall Street Journal reporter who's been detained there for more than a year now. Evan Gershkovich now will have to stay behind bars until at least late June. Remember, he was arrested on spy charges last month, but Gershkovich and the Journal denied the allegations against him. Number 3, maybe some not so good news for fans of Foxtrot and Dom's Kitchen. Closing up shop for good. All of those stores, Chicago, Austin, Dallas, D.C., they're all shutting down really this afternoon, like today, in just the last few hours. Some workers reportedly being told they are out of a job. Dom's Kitchen says it couldn't find a viable option to stay open. Number 4, check out this video. You are looking at the first ever flame-throwing robot dog, the Terminator. It can apparently help control wildfires, remove ice, show up just for the entertainment factor of it all, apparently. Terminator could be yours for the low, low price of $9,000. That is sarcasm. Number 5, Prince William, Princess Kate posting a new picture of their son for his 6th birthday, Prince Louis. According to the caption, Kate took the picture, but this one, according to British media, is not edited, they say. Now, this photo is the first picture put up by that royal family since the palace posted the edited family photo, remember, last month. Back here at home tonight, the CDC is warning doctors about the risks of Photox, fake Botox, just a few weeks after we first told you on this show about some bad reactions. To refresh your memory here, officials are looking into clusters of more than 20 people across 11 states who reported problems after getting this counterfeit Botox. Some even ended up in the ER with problems with double vision, having a tough time swallowing, having difficulty breathing, or raising their arms. Officials say these injections were given by unlicensed or untrained people in non-healthcare settings. So think of somebody at their house or like at a med spa. They say there's no indication that real, actual Botox is linked to any of this. And if you know somebody who's doing Botox or you've done it yourself, yeah, join the club, man. You're not alone. Tons of people are. Look at these numbers, from 5 million in 2019 to nearly 9 million people in 2022. Erica Edwards is following this one for us. So what is the deal here, right? Because we first reported the story a few weeks back, and have we seen more cases since? What is behind the CDC warning?
Hey, Hallie. Actually, right now, the number still stands at 22 cases in 11 states nationwide. They have been reported from California and Washington, Nebraska, Kentucky, and all the way out east to in New York and New Jersey. But it is likely that we will see that number grow. Now that the CDC has come out with an alert for doctors nationwide, now they know when a person comes into the emergency department after receiving Botox, if they have trouble swallowing, trouble breathing, or if they're having trouble raising their arms or their head, those are red flags. Hallie?
What about if you're going to get Botox? And like, this is not to cast aspersions on all med spas, because some of those places presumably could use actual Botox. How are you supposed to know?
So the fake product looks an awful lot like the real thing, especially to an untrained eye. But there are a few clues. Number one, fake Botox does not come in 150-unit doses. The fake products come in those 150-unit doses. That's not the real thing. The other thing experts say is that, perhaps this is the easiest for us to spot, if the packaging is in any language other than English. And guys, it's okay to ask your provider to see the product, to see that file, before they ever inject anything into your body. Hallie?
Is it your sense, Erica, that it took kind of a little bit for the CDC to get up and get this warning out?
Yeah, you know, we've been reporting on this for a couple of weeks now. Yeah. And the CDC told me that they've really been sort of going back and forth with their scientific advisors to get this warning out. But so far, you know, the warning remains just what we've been reporting, that doctors should be looking for these symptoms.
Erica Edwards, on top of it all, thank you so much for that. Still to come, we break down the big, long history of protests on campus and how it brought us to the moment we're seeing now. Plus, if you're signed up for Clear at an airport, a first-in-the-nation bill is trying to change, well, everything about it. The new details next. A first-in-the-nation bill is targeting quote-unquote line cutters at airport security. We're talking about the screening company Clear that lets travelers pay money to skip the line at security once you get your identity confirmed at a kiosk. The bipartisan proposal is in California. It would force Clear to create its own line at airports separate from the general lane, or else it'll get banned. I want to bring in Steve Patterson now. I say line cutters like in a bit tongue-in-cheek because you pay for it. Like it's not like a rando jumping in front. Like you pay to go through Clear and then you get in front of the line. So what's the beef from lawmakers here?
The beef from specifically Josh Newman, who's this state lawmaker in California, Democrat, who, by the way, as you mentioned, has bipartisan support, which you might imagine is very rare in California.
Yeah.
The beef is specifically cutting the line, okay? The problem that they have is that people are standing in these TSA lines, you know, maybe upwards of an hour in some cases. They see people at these kiosks. These people are then escorted to the front of the line, and then they go on their flight. It just simply incensed this lawmaker who has agreement that there should be some dignity in the whole process. And their problem, again, is not with the line cutting service. Like, they've made clear that they don't want Clear to necessarily go out of business. It is specifically the act of somebody being able to cut in these general lines. So if they're able to somehow fund this and, you know, get approval from the TSA to form their own line, they're okay with that. The feasibility of something like that doesn't seem very likely. And the bill, I think, is going to face some tough opposition. Hallie?
I just I feel compelled by a moral and ethical standard to say that I am a Clear person. Like I have Clear and use Clear. Right. Like so stipulated. Isn't the point of getting Clear, like the incentive for getting Clear is that you don't have to wait in line?
That is the point. Absolutely. 100%. I think the argument from the other side, though, is that you have PreCheck, which is its own system, which works on its own, and it doesn't force people to see you cutting in front of them in the line, is what I'm getting. And yes, you pay for the service, you pay for Clear, so it's a premium service. And I think, you know, a lot of the language that I've heard from these lawmakers, speaking to other outlets, not us, obviously, we've reached out, haven't heard anything yet, is that it's the sense of somebody having a premium service, being wealthy enough to afford it, and then sort of flaunting that as they're getting on their plane.
Right, I get that. The idea that there are different levels of service at an airport when folks should be able to have that ability. PreCheck, of course, folks have to pay for as well to get PreCheck. What's Clear saying about this?
Clear has issued a statement. We've gotten it. They say, quote, "We are proud to partner with 9 airports across California, creating hundreds of jobs, sharing more than $13 million in annual revenue with our California airport partners, and serving nearly 1 million Californians." Their argument is simply this. Look, airports have gotten used to having Clear. It's part of their process. Taking it out now would gunk up that process, but also the revenue sharing from this. These airlines get a cut of the money that they're seeing, and so ticket prices might go up if you remove Clear from the picture. Hallie?
What are the chances this spreads beyond the state where you're standing now?
I mean, you know, California is a precedent-setting state. And, you know, we've seen it for a lot of things, specifically when it comes to the environment, with travel, and certainly, you know, some of the things that the Newsom administration has done in the previous years. This could be one of those things. I think, though, this is going to face steep opposition, specifically from opposition that has deep pockets. These airliners are going to line up against this thing, right? This cuts into their business. Nobody wants that. I think the proposal has got partnering with certain union partners, TSA and flight attendants want this, but I think it's going to be very tough for it to make it out unscathed. Hallie.
Steve Patterson live for us there in California. Keep us posted. Thank you. NBC News covers hundreds of other stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Northeast Bureau, the city of Baltimore, in new court documents, now alleges the owners of that cargo ship that crashed into a bridge were negligent and should be held fully liable for that deadly incident, the one that killed 6 people. City officials say the companies, in their words, put a clearly unseaworthy vessel into the water and say what they did was potentially criminally negligent. The officials want a trial by jury. A spokesperson for the ship's owners declined to respond to these new filings. Out of our Midwest Bureau, a Minnesota state senator going to court for breaking into her stepmother's home, allegedly. The Democrat says her stepmom refuses to give her possessions from her late father, like his ashes. She now faces a first-degree burglary charge, a felony. Officers reportedly found the lawmaker's Senate ID and driver's license at the scene of the crime. In response, Mitchell said, I'm quoting here, "Clearly, I'm not good at this." And out of our Northeast Bureau, West Virginia, confirming its first known case of measles in the last 15 years. The health department doesn't know how this adult patient ended up exposed, but they did say they just got back from a trip overseas. This comes as measles cases in the U.S. this year are already nearly double the number that we saw all of last year. I want to get to some breaking news into us in just the last couple of minutes now. We're just learning House Speaker Mike Johnson is set to visit Jewish students at Columbia University tomorrow afternoon. We've talked about in this show the pro-Palestinian protests there that have taken over campus, protests that have now spread across the country, even around the world. More students from more universities joining in with this sort of nationwide movement among some in the younger generation. This is not the first time that something like this has happened as far as protests on campus. College campuses have been this sort of breeding ground for social and cultural movements for decades. Valerie Castro has the breakdown.
Protests rocking campuses from coast to coast. Columbia University, ground zero, born out of decades of activism, clashing views and values.
I'm for free press, free speech, and I think college campuses are the most important place for that, and Columbia has a history of advocacy.
A history at that campus dating back to the Vietnam War. Students protesting U.S. involvement in the war and the draft seized university buildings, temporarily took a dean hostage, shutting down the school. In the end, over 100 people hurt and more than 700 arrested.
For the young people of this nation who are particularly concerned, and I understand why they are concerned about this war, I respect your idealism.
Sit-ins, encampments, marches spread to Kent State, where things turned deadly.
The trouble began when hundreds of students gathered for an anti-war demonstration.
4 killed, 9 others hurt when the Ohio National Guard opened fire. In the decades just before, mass movements of social justice and the fight for civil rights. The Greensboro sit-ins, 4 college students stand up against segregation, sparking a chain reaction and turning point for equality. An issue again at play decades later with the Black Lives Matter movement started in 2013. BLM marches popping up on campuses. A movement reignited in 2020 with the death of George Floyd, then Breonna Taylor. From the fight for feminism, a debate on gun rights, an outcry on climate change. Climate change is real. A demand for the end of apartheid regimes. America's next generation of leaders, showing that education is not just studies.
Why can't students go to college quietly, like they used to, and get an education?
But using the stage to share their voices along the way from both sides of the aisle. Valerie Castro, NBC News.
Our thanks to Valerie for that reporting. Coming up, we are joined one-on-one with our newsmaker tonight, a Republican Congresswoman. There she is, Cathy McMorris-Rodgers. More on that, what you just heard about, and plenty more coming up right after the break. Back here live to Washington now. We're up on Capitol Hill. We are waiting to see if and when the Senate could vote on this big foreign aid bill that may also end up with a TikTok ban. One of the folks who voted for it over on the House side is Republican Congresswoman from Washington, Cathy McMorris-Rodgers. She is joining us now. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Hallie. Good to be with you.
Thank you. So listen, let's take this bill in a couple of buckets here as we're looking to see what the Senate will do. We expect maybe some action on that in the next few hours, potentially. You voted for this latest aid package, as well as some others since the start of the war from Russia against Ukraine. What is your sense about the next time our allies in Ukraine might need funding? Let's say 6 months, a year down the line. Are you confident there's going to be support in your party for that?
Well, there's certainly support for Ukraine in its fight for independence, self-determination. I think many, and including me too, want to know what the long-term plan is, what victory looks like in Ukraine, as well as what kind of accountability measures are in place to ensure that the money is actually going to where it is needed. I believe that it is important that America lead with moral clarity, and part of this was helping Ukraine in its fight for self-determination and independence. It also included aid for Israel, which is our greatest, closest ally in the Middle East, and the importance of recognizing Israel's right to exist and supporting it right now during this time. And there were other provisions also in this package.
Of course, other provisions, including the potential one that could end up with a ban of TikTok here, right? We've seen TikTok now over the course of the last several months tell people, hey, get in touch with your lawmakers, protest this move, right? They're launching, and according to internal memos that we've obtained, potentially a legal fight now against this. What is your message to your constituents, probably like the Gen Z ones, who are being told right now that their elected officials are like out to get an app that they love?
TikTok will have a choice to make. The legislation raises the concerns around TikTok as a national security threat. And Republicans and Democrats agree that we need to take action to ensure that TikTok is divested from the Chinese Communist Party ultimately, because it's owned by ByteDance. We know that TikTok has repeatedly been caught in this lie that it doesn't answer to the Chinese Communist Party. But yet we also know that TikTok has been used through its parent company ByteDance to spy on Americans, to spy on journalists right now. We know that according to internal recordings by employees at TikTok that, quote, everything is seen by China. And we know that we can't trust China to protect our privacy, to protect our American values. And that's why this bill, it is TikTok's choice whether or not it remains controlled and owned by ByteDance, and would not be allowed in the United States, or if they decide to sell and under a new entity allowed to operate in the United States.
Well, all of this it may come up in the years to come down the road on the Hill, years in which you will presumably not be a member of the conference. Of course, you announced back in February you're not running for re-election. You are one of about 24 House Republicans who are either retiring at the end of the session, seeking higher office, or at least straight up stepping down. I don't have to tell you that Republicans have a razor-thin majority. The margins are just so close in the House of Representatives. Are you concerned that departures of members like you could empower the more far-right flank of your party? How do you think about that?
Well, there's a variety of reasons as to why members make these decisions. I am really proud to be the chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and we're going to make sure that we're finishing strong. I've had the honor of serving in Congress now for 10 terms, and for me, it was really a decision based upon some, a desire to be with my family more, but ultimately to finish strong as the chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done, whether it's on the TikTok bill to protect Americans from apps that are controlled by foreign adversaries, or work that I'm doing right now with Senator Cantwell on getting a national data privacy law in place to protect Americans' privacy rights, which is also really important. But I do believe that the Republicans are in a very strong position. It is a narrow majority, but there's actually more Democrats than Republicans who have announced they're not running again in the House.
I promise I'll get to the Data Privacy Act in a second, but let me just press on this point here, because you've had this long and sort of high-profile tenure in the Capitol on the House side there. Do you believe that right now there is room in your party for people like you who represent your brand of republicanism?
Well, yes, I'm proving that even right now, being very effective as the leader of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, working on legislation that are priorities for Republicans, as well as working across the aisle, getting things done. I believe in the importance of legislating. I believe that on behalf of the American people, it's important that we are doing our jobs in the House, in the Senate, on behalf of the people. And that's the type of legislator that I've been. And I absolutely know that I've had a lot of support in my role on the committee and in the House.
And I know you're hoping to get that American Privacy Rights Act over the finish line at some point, Congresswoman. Talk through why you believe that is so important to do as one of your last acts before you leave Congress.
Yes, this has been years in the making, both in the House and the Senate, members that have been advocating for over 2 decades. Right now, there is no limit on the data that is collected on us as individuals. It can be location data, search engine history, your sensitive data, and we need to be protecting America's privacy rights online. Different states have passed laws, and oftentimes they become in conflict with one another, which makes it difficult, especially for small businesses or startups. And I'm really encouraged that we've been able to hammer out a bill that enjoys bipartisan, bicameral support during a Congress where you don't see a lot of that happening. But I think it goes to what an important moment this is and why this is a bill that needs to pass this Congress.
Congresswoman Cathy McMorris-Rodgers, thank you so much for being on the show, for chatting with us through all of these many issues facing the chamber. Really appreciate your time tonight. When we come back,
great to be with
how the future of climate change depends on the voters in half the world this year. Half the world's population casting ballots that could affect your future. We'll explain. Climate is on the ballot this year, with about half the world's population set to elect leaders. Look at this, something like 45 countries, all the ones you see in yellow, that will be holding all kinds of elections. And the people who end up in office are going to face some huge challenges in delivering on climate promises. We're talking about stuff like ending deforestation, tripling renewable energy capacity, and really cutting back on greenhouse gas emissions. Josh Letterman is joining us now. Walk us through some of the key elections around the world where climate concerns are a particularly big deal.
Yeah, Hallie, this isn't just philosophical. This really hits home in a lot of localized ways, such as in Brazil, where this is playing a major role in the election for the mayor's race in Sao Paulo, which has become kind of a proxy battle between President Lula, who is an environmentalist, has really vowed to crack down on the massive deforestation, which is a huge issue in Brazil. And on the other hand, former President Bolsonaro, who oversaw the expansion of that deforestation. And both of the candidates in that mayor's race are now trying to portray themselves as friends of the rainforest who are going to crack down on that. And this extends to the world's largest democracy, India, where more people are going to vote in the elections that are now underway than in any other country in the world. And India, a country facing extreme heat, drought, really severe effects of climate change. But it's interesting, Hallie, Prime Minister Modi, who's up for re-election, is a believer in climate change, but he has kind of made the argument that this isn't our problem to solve, because he says the U.S., other industrialized countries have polluted so much more historically that it's not really up to India, as it's in the middle of developing economically, to be limiting its own development by cracking down on fossil fuels. And we're also seeing this at play in South Africa, where the ANC, the party of Nelson Mandela, is facing its biggest threat since the end of apartheid. And in South Africa, they also are facing extreme heat, drought, and climate conditions. But interestingly, one of the big critiques of the ANC is that they are too cozy with some of those energy interests, that in fact they have allowed the energy system in South Africa to be neglected, those coal plants to get way too old to be functioning. If the ANC is to lose in this election, it would likely speed up the transition in South Africa towards cleaner energies.
Josh Letterman, live for us overseas with all of that. Josh, thank you very much. Appreciate your reporting on that. That does it for us for this hour. We've got more coverage picking up right now. We are coming on the air with a dramatic protest down in Tennessee after Republicans there passed a new law, a new bill that would let teachers carry concealed guns in schools. Parents may not even know if their kid's teacher has one in class. All of it after that deadly Covenant school shooting. The videos we're just getting in from students, from parents, from people who are just angry and showing it right now. Then we'll take you over to some of the elite schools under pressure with pro-Palestinian protests now going global. Police clearing away camps, barriers going up, all of it casting a shadow on graduation season, as we're just learning the House Speaker is getting ready to visit the school at the center of it all tomorrow. We're live at Columbia. We're also live outside Donald Trump's trial with new details about how those so-called catch and kill schemes worked from the ultimate tabloid insider, what the jury is learning from David Pecker, and where that partial gag order on the former president stands tonight. And the new details we're getting in just the last hour on the manhunt for a former police officer accused of killing 2 people and kidnapping a 1-year-old, where police think he's headed next. And some clear concerns in California with that company that helps folks skip the line at the airport. Could it change how you get your next flight? We'll explain later in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and we're starting this hour with some breaking news out of Tennessee. Lawmakers there just passing a bill that would let teachers carry concealed guns into public schools. The move creating some dramatic demonstrations now at the State House. Want to show you. That is what it's been looking like in just the last maybe hour, 90 minutes, not even, at the State House in Nashville. You see people chanting, they're holding signs. One person was reportedly kicked out. But this bill coming a year after that horrific mass shooting at Covenant School in Nashville, killing the 6 people that you see here. The 3 children, 3 adults. Some parents saying this is not the step they wanted to see.
We don't want guns. The teachers don't want guns. The majority of people do not want teachers to have firearms in our schools. The goal is to get firearms away from schools, not put them in the schools. So we showed up today to apply pressure to our representatives, and lo and behold, it really didn't do a whole lot.
Now, some of these demonstrators say this is such a concern because in some instances, parents may not even know if their kids are in a classroom with a teacher carrying a gun. But lawmakers who support this bill say it's actually going to make students safer. Listen.
Currently, it's just one of those gun-free zones where people know they can go there and take advantage of folks.
I want to bring in Liz Kreutz, who's covering this one for us, for more tonight. So this is not a done deal yet. The governor would still need to sign it. That is the expectation here, even with this pushback from parents, right?
Yeah, Hallie, I mean, at this point, it's all but certain that this is going to become law with a Republican governor, a Republican legislature. This passed by 68 yeses, 28 noes. But what we really saw, as you show with these images of a really contentious scene right now at the state capitol with Democrats and protesters, parents, families of victims of school shootings there demonstrating against this. And this is the first piece of legislation that's passed since that school shooting that happened in Nashville last year. And that's something that Democratic lawmakers were quick to point out, saying this should not be the type of legislation that is passed.
Just think about that. This is what we're going to do. This is our reaction to teachers and children being murdered in a school. Our reaction is to throw more guns at it.
Now, there are going to be some requirements for teachers that want to carry firearms. They're going to have to get approval from school administrators and from a law enforcement agency. They're going to have a valid handgun carry permit, undergo a background check, complete 40 hours of additional training, and pass a psychological evaluation. But those who are against this feel like that does not go far enough, that it puts too much responsibility on the teacher, and that it also creates an unsafe environment. Potentially another student could get their hands on that gun. And they're also pushing back to the fact that teachers do not need to alert the parents of the students that they are carrying a gun. Hallie.
Liz, we are taking a look now at some live pictures there on the steps there outside the State House in Nashville. Obviously, this has touched a nerve with so many folks.
Absolutely. And you can see the sign there, how many more, because there's so many people who oppose this legislation, saying that more guns is not the answer at a time when we are seeing so many school shootings, people yelling shame, the protesters yelling blood on their hands. A very dramatic scene there, Hallie, as you've been mentioning.
Liz Kreutz, thank you very much for that reporting. We're going to be watching that, of course, throughout the night and into tomorrow as well. We're also watching protests at campuses spreading around the world and getting more intense, with students, university officials, police clashing on how to address something that we're all watching unfold. As we're learning tonight, House Speaker Mike Johnson is set to visit Columbia University in New York tomorrow, visiting with Jewish students in the middle of all this tension. You see it playing out everywhere. Look at this map here. More than 100 NYU students and faculty gathering in New York in just the last hour. That's on the right of your screen. In the middle there, that's the University of Michigan, where police are cleaning up some of the encampment that's been put up in place. 9 people arrested there. To the left of your screen, in Seattle, high school students protesting also. The other places, schools where we've been seeing something similar play out recently because of tensions over the war in the Middle East. It is a fight that is going global, with students at Sydney University even staging their own encampment. At NYU, 120 people were detained overnight, according to officials. Police say they were trying to clear everyone out when protesters hit them with bottles. You've got barriers now being set up around campus. Students have mixed feelings.
I feel like they treat students as targets sometimes. I think it's good that, they're trying to keep this all under control.
Because this is during finals, so certainly it causes disruption to our review sessions.
And over at the school that really became the epicenter of these protests, Columbia, with faculty prepping a resolution that would essentially censure the school's president after she authorized the NYPD to clear the encampment there. Aaron McLaughlin is live for us in New York. So this conflicting reporting is now coming out between what schools say the situation is like and what faculty and students are saying, specifically at NYU, right?
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. We today spoke with a member of the faculty who told us that he was arrested last night, one of the 120 to be arrested on the NYU campus in the middle of what he says was a very peaceful demonstration. He said that students and faculty of all faiths had gathered outside NYU's Stern Business School to protest. He said that he had just been allowed into the protest by security when riot police moved in. Take a listen to what he told me.
I linked arms with my colleagues on the faculty of New York University in order to protect our students from the police. They pepper sprayed some of them. They were very, there's some eyewitness cases of police brutality from that rush behind us.
He says he was arrested for trespassing. Later, among the 116 of those arrested that were released by police, the NYU school putting out a very different account in its statement saying, quote, "We witnessed disorderly, disruptive, and antagonizing behavior that has interfered with the safety and security of our community. And that demonstrated how quickly a demonstration can get out of control or people can get hurt." It's a very different account coming out of the school, Hallie.
And then Columbia, Aaron, you've been doing some reporting over there, too, talking with another professor who's mad at the school for not doing enough.
Yeah, that's right. You remember that there were those mass arrests at Columbia, over 100 students, protesters arrested last week. Well, this week, they've allowed the encampment to continue its presence on campus, and that has some of the Jewish faculty members upset. Take a listen.
It shouldn't be that we have to shut down classes and go virtual and force us to stay home and encourage Jewish students to stay home because the protesters have created an unsafe environment. It should be the other way around. Those who are actively creating an unsafe environment should be told to go home.
Now, the university today announcing that they're allowing for a hybrid learning option, saying safety is our highest priority and we strive to support our students' learning and all the required academic operations. Meanwhile, House Republicans are calling for the president of Columbia University to resign for not cracking down on the protests happening on campus there. Hallie.
Aaron McLaughlin, thank you very much for that reporting. Lots of it. I appreciate it. Elsewhere in New York, in downtown Manhattan, Donald Trump's criminal trial is giving us a look we've never seen before inside one of America's biggest tabloids. Thanks to testimony from the guy you're about to see, this one, David Pecker. He's the former head of the National Enquirer, walking the jury through the close-knit relationship he had with a man he called simply Donald, along with his relationship with Donald's former fixer, Michael Cohen. Pecker, at one point, describing a meeting he had when the two men asked him to be the campaign's eyes and ears. You see it there. Talking through this unwritten, confidential agreement to promote stories that would help then-candidate Trump and embellish from there stories that would hurt his opponents at the time, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, etc. Pecker also explained how these catch-and-kill schemes worked to save Mr. Trump from embarrassment. Like when Pecker paid $30,000 to a doorman who allegedly made up a story about Mr. Trump. That's the catch. And then never running it, the so-called kill. According to Pecker, Cohen said that made the boss, meaning Donald Trump, very pleased. Let's bring in now Rahema Ellis and Brian Stelter Raheem, let me start with you here, because what's interesting, the details that Pecker gave about Donald Trump and his money, really painting this picture of somebody who was like kind of a micromanager on how this money was being spent, something that is going to set up the state's case, the prosecution's case moving forward, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing that he did in all of that was talked about Michael Cohen's relationship in all of that, saying that Donald Trump had introduced him to Michael Cohen and made it very clear that if Michael Cohen called him and said that he was calling on behalf of Donald Trump, indeed he was calling on behalf of Donald Trump, that he was going to be not just his lawyer, but his intermediary, you said, so to speak, and that it was important. And so going forward, it seems like this is something that's very crucial for the prosecution. As you know, Michael Cohen is a conflicted witness for some, if you will, saying because he's already been convicted of lying. And so he will be attacked for that. But David Pecker was very clear on the stand today. He is someone who has been given immunity in this case for his testimony, and it's expected that he is telling all there is to tell in the way that it is telling the truth. And the truth that he was telling on that stand today is that there is a clear connection, a strong connection between Donald Trump, Michael Cohen, and the information that David Pecker got from Michael Cohen.
What's also just so fascinating on this, right, today, because, Brian, you've covered the tabloid world for years. The tabloids do not work the way that, like, mainstream news organizations work, right? Some of these stories are bananas bizarro. Like, I think about, I covered Ted Cruz back in 2016. Right. There was one story that was like, a couple stories that were like Ted Cruz's dad had links to the JFK assassination, just crazy stuff. Another, a 2-page spread, 5 romps that will destroy Ted Cruz. I mean, these were the headlines out there. Yep. Senator Cruz is telling our Hill team today he is not interested in revisiting ancient history. It's like 8 years ago, Brian, and it is this really rare inside look at how clickbait basically is made.
That's right. I've never seen anything like this. The Inquirer has had so many secrets, and they've kept them so hidden until now. David Pecker's never had to talk about this publicly until today, and it's not journalism at all. It is more like advertising. Think about Pecker as a great advertiser, a marketer on behalf of Donald Trump. He talked about knowing Trump since the 80s. They became closer when Trump became a presidential candidate. And Pecker really loved that proximity to power. He loved being in the mix, having influence, using his magazine to flatter his friends and punish his perceived enemies. He told Trump that he would be Trump's eyes and ears, looking out for negative stories and then burying those stories. And Michael Cohen was the go-between. It really is a blast from the past, Hallie, but it's not a very pleasant blast from the past. It's a reminder of how sketchy and even sleazy some of these stories were back in 2015 and 2016.
What's interesting is, remember, the defense attorneys for the former president said, hey, you're going to hear a lot of salacious stuff, right? Don't worry about the salacious piece of it. Like, that's not relevant here. What is relevant is the way that prosecutors are trying to cast this as more than just a hush money trial. They're trying to say that this was actually illegal election interference more broadly, like a conspiracy. How does Pecker's testimony play into that piece?
I do think that Pecker has helped the prosecution on that front, at least a little bit today, by acknowledging that he tried to describe this as a mutual benefit, that both sides were benefiting. And the prosecutors pushed back and said, no, it was really Trump. It was the campaign that was benefiting from this. And even though we're talking about what happened in 2016, it is relevant today. It's relevant to 2024 and beyond, because as politically fatigued and burned out as so many of us are, the same tactics and techniques that Trump used back then are still being employed today. He just doesn't do it with the National Enquirer anymore. But think about the way that some of his rivals are smeared. Back in 2016, the National Enquirer said Hillary Clinton's close to death. She has 6 months to live. What do they say now about Biden? What do they say now about the current president? It's the same kinds of narratives that we see from Trump world, but they're just laundered in a different way now.
Raheem, let me go to you, because as much as we can be on pins and needles for anything in this, I think folks are related to the judge's decision on this gag order. It sounds like the judge was kind of getting frustrated a bit with the defense as they were walking through what the former president has the right to say and about whom.
Yeah, he was getting very frustrated. All of that kind of frustration came at the beginning of the court day. The jurors were not in the courtroom, so they were not privy to this kind of exchange that the judge had. And he was talking about the gag order in so much as the prosecution was asking for a hearing and for the judge to make a ruling on what it is alleging the violations that Donald Trump has made in the judge's order not to talk about jurors, et cetera. And at one point, the judge was saying to the attorney for Donald Trump. It seems like your client is manipulating some of these retweets that he has done. And Blanchard, who is Donald Trump's attorney, said, I wouldn't use the word manipulation. But the judge said that seems to apply to one of these particular tweets. And at that point, the Judge Merchan said, you are losing credibility. You are losing all credibility with this court, I have to tell you. And we should share with you what Donald Trump had to say at the end of court today about the gag order. Take a listen.
We have a gag order, which to me is totally unconstitutional. I'm not allowed to talk, but people are allowed to talk about me. I'd love to talk to you people. I'd love to say everything that's on my mind, but I'm restricted because I have a gag order.
And the judge is saying that restriction is limited. You can talk about the judge, but you can't talk about the jurors in this particular case. And so we will see what will happen. The judge has taken this question of whether or not Donald Trump has violated the gag order under advisement. He has given no indication as to when he will rule on that. Hallie?
Rahima Ellis, Brian Stelter, we're so glad to both of you for helping us unpack all of what we saw in court today. Thank you so much. More, of course, in the days to come. Also more tonight from President Biden down south on the road tonight, maybe hoping to make the state of Florida a battleground again, or if not, at least the battleground zero for abortion access, with that state's 6-week ban set to go into effect just days from now.
It was Donald Trump who ripped away the rights of freedom of women in America. It'll be all of us who restore those rights for women in America.
It's going to be up to voters in Florida come November with this proposed amendment to the abortion ban on the ballot. And Team Biden hopes that'll drive out Democrats to the polls this fall. Yamiche Alcindor is in Florida. She is joining us now. This is not anymore these days, right? We're a long way from what we were at the turn of the century here in 2000. Donald Trump won this state twice. It's just not seen as the swing state it used to be. And yet here's the president in a critical campaign year on a critical campaign issue hitting that turf. Talk us through the strategy.
Well, President Biden really wanted to make sure that voters in Florida heard from him in particular. We've seen the vice president out on a number of trips since Roe v. Wade was overturned. She's really become the most prominent voice on the administration on this topic. But campaign aides told me just in the last hour that they wanted the president to come here because they wanted him specifically to be attacking Donald Trump on this issue. And he did do that for a number of minutes, including saying that he was responsible for Roe v. Wade being overturned. He also said that this isn't a states' rights issue, that this is really a woman's rights issue. And he said that voters should hold Donald Trump accountable. So this is really President Biden wanting to lean in on an issue that voters, at least in polls, show they really trust him more than Donald Trump on. And of course, we've seen a number of issues where he's struggling on. But on the issue of abortion, it's a winning issue according to voters and according to our polls. Hallie?
It's also this split screen moment here, because while former President Trump is, like, again this week decrying his inability to be on the campaign trail because he's in court, President Biden is on the trail. We know, and you've talked about this, right, based on polling, that Democrats see this as an advantageous issue for them. They're trying to add some urgency here, Yamiche, as it sounds like they are, what, stacking the chairs behind you, friend? Clean enough?
Hallie, you've been on the campaign trail a lot of times. The president left several hours ago, so they are trying to get home now. But I'm sure you can still hear me. But yes, there are people stacking a number of things behind me. But I want to tell you, as you said, this is quite a split screen. I mean, President Biden wanted to come to Florida. Of course, it's not just because this six-week ban is set to go into effect on May 1st. It's also Donald Trump's home state. He might be here if he wasn't on trial in New York. Of course, having to be in New York, and the judge, of course, saying that he can't leave that courtroom and can't leave that trial or unless he be arrested. So President Biden wanted to also come here and make that case. I also talked to some people who are in favor of abortion rights, and they say this really shows that President Biden has the time to deal with the nation's issues, has the time to talk about the campaign while President Trump is still dealing with his own legal problems, Hallie.
Yamiche Alcindor, we will let you clear on out there. Don't let the door hit you on your way back home. Thank you so much, Yamiche. Appreciate it, breaking down all of it. And as soon as maybe a few hours from now, the Senate could vote on that big bill that includes a potential ban on TikTok, with senators today going through the procedural dotting of the I's and crossing of the T's before one final vote. Now, remember, even if this does get passed in the Senate, and even if President Biden signs this bill like he says he would, it doesn't mean TikTok goes away immediately. It's not going to just, like, poof off your phone. The Chinese-based company that owns the app would have at least 9 months to sell off TikTok. Not that TikTok's okay with that. Internal memos obtained by NBC suggest they're going to take this to court if it comes to that. Ryan Nobles is joining us now. So what's the deal? Tonight, tomorrow, the vote happens, and then the ban starts to snowball?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good assessment of it, Hallie.
Pretty good. Okay.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, I'm impressed. You could work up here.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that it looks as though they're inching closer to this final vote. They're going through a period of time right now where senators have up to 30 hours to debate the back and forth about this rule before the final vote happens. It's very unlikely that they take all 30 of those hours. It's much more likely that they work probably until the late evening today before they finally move to the final vote. And it's expected to pass pretty easily. In fact, that procedural step, the big procedural step they had to take to open up that 30 hours of voting passed 80-10. So it shows that there is a lot of broad bipartisan support for this. But what's going to happen in terms of TikTok is it's basically going to start the clock for them, the TikTok, if you will. And they're going to have between 9 months and to a year to try and get ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, to divest, or there is a potential that it could be banned in the United States. Now, as you rightly point out, their internal memos show that they are prepared to fight this out in court, so that could end up being a long process. Of course, the TikTok portion of it is just a small prong of this four-prong plan that's going to pass here today, including funding for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. That $60 billion funding for Ukraine is something that's been very controversial with conservative Republicans. And Mitch McConnell, who's the Senate Republican leader, has been strongly behind the idea of Ukraine support from the very beginning. And today he shared with us a theory behind why he thinks Republican support for Ukraine had faded over time. Listen to what he had to say.
Demonization of Ukraine began by Tucker Carlson, who, in my opinion, ended up where he should have been all along, which is interviewing Vladimir Putin. And then our nominee for president didn't seem to want us to do anything at all. That took months to work our way through it.
So he's blaming Tucker Carlson, and Donald Trump didn't mention him by name there, for kind of eroding away the support for Ukraine. But he says this vote here tonight shows that Republicans are turning back in the other direction, away from isolationism. Hallie?
That's like a pretty good explanation. Ryan Nobles, thank you very much. Live for us on Capitol Hill. Appreciate it.
I can work here.
Appreciate you. Let's take you out west now, where police in Washington state in just the last hour say they are making progress, in their words, in a manhunt for a former school police officer and accused child rapist who they think may be involved in the deaths of 2 women and the kidnapping of a baby boy. The suspect, a person of interest in a Monday shooting outside a local elementary school that left his ex-wife dead. Officials say he's also potentially connected to the death of his current girlfriend, whose body was found at his home the same day. Police think he then drove off with this 1-year-old boy named Roman. Officials say they think he's making his way towards Mexico, but police in Portland announced they believe he was spotted in their city overnight. He should be considered armed and dangerous and could commit more crimes while he's on the run. NBC's Elwin Lopez is following this for us. So police said they're making progress in that manhunt. What does progress mean? Does that indicate that they're getting closer to a capture? Do we know?
Yeah, well, listen, Hallie, they're not going to say exactly because they don't want to tip off this suspect, as you can imagine. But we do know that they spotted him in Portland in a black sedan. And initially, when he fled the scene, they said he was in a silver Toyota. So it seems that he has changed vehicles, but they're not telling us exactly what vehicle they believe he's in. We don't have a license plate number for this. But to understand where we got to today, we have to go back to February, several months ago, when he was accused of child rape. Now, in court documents, it alleges that he sexually assaulted an underage girl and that she was sleeping at his home. We know that that home is one that he shared with another teenager. That teenager he met at a middle school when he's a school resource officer there. We know that they shared a child together. That child was 9 months old when all of this occurred. Officials say that he was scheduled to appear in court on Monday. He did not show up, and instead, he shot and killed, according to police, his ex-wife outside of a school where she worked.
They know now that after they got that search warrant for him and he fled the scene, they went over to his house, and they know that his girlfriend appeared to be shot and killed by him, by that suspect. And they are now on the lookout, not just for him, but for that baby, that 1-year-old baby. Police have not said whether or not he is related to that child, but we know that FBI and U.S. Marshals are on the lookout for this man, and they believe that he is on his way to Mexico. Hallie?
Elwin Lopez live for us there out west. Thank you. Much more to get to when we come back, including the new ban affecting tens of millions of workers across the country. Why it's a pretty big win for labor rights. Plus, NBC's exclusive reporting on Megan Thee Stallion coming up against some pretty serious accusations. Why she's now facing a lawsuit from a former staffer. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the Justice Department is now set to pay nearly $140 million to the victims of disgraced sports doctor Larry Nassar over that botched FBI investigation. But they failed to act on warnings about the convicted abuser. The DOJ now calls those fundamental errors. Remember, Michigan State University agreed to pay $500,000 to victims back in 2018. USA Gymnastics and the U.S. Olympic Committee agreed to pay $380 million in 2021. Number 2, an NBC News exclusive now. A former cameraman for Megan Thee Stallion filing a lawsuit accusing her of harassment and a hostile work environment. He says he was trapped inside a moving car while she had sex with a woman. Representatives from Megan and her management company did not immediately respond to NBC's request for comment. Number 3, ex-Congressman George Santos saying goodbye for now, literally, posting online he's withdrawing his independent House bid. Remember, Santos made history last year when he became one of the few lawmakers to be expelled from the House. Bye. Number 4, a huge rule change out of the FTC in the last couple hours. It seems to be a big win for workers. A ban on non-compete clauses. You know, it's like a thing in the contract for something like 1 in 5 workers in this country that makes it harder for them to switch jobs. This is the biggest change to job rules from the FTC in more than half a century. It's probably going to face a new legal challenge from the Chamber of Commerce as soon as tomorrow. Number 5, a worker in Colorado was about to release a bunch of water into the spillway of a reservoir. Well, look at this. He noticed 2 cubs laying there. Officials rushed to the scene, dangled a rope to help pull those lion cubs up. They say if the water ended up released, the little cubs probably would have drowned. Thankfully, they got out. They ran off. So, bobcats, I guess. Tonight, the CDC alerting doctors about the risks of fake Botox just a few weeks after we told you about bad reactions. Remember, officials are investigating clusters of more than 20 people in 11 states who reported problems after getting counterfeit Botox, or Photox as it's called. Some of them even ended up in the ER because of problems like double vision, trouble breathing. Officials say that these injections were given by unlicensed or untrained people in non-healthcare settings. So think of like a house, think of a med spa. There's no indication, they say, that real Botox is linked to any of these illnesses. If you get Botox, if you know somebody who does, you are so not alone. Join the club. Went from 5 million people getting injections back in 2019 to something like nearly 9 million just a few years later. Let's bring in Erica Edwards for more. So what is the deal here, right? Because we first reported the story a few weeks back, and have we seen more cases since? What is behind the CDC warning?
Hey, Hallie. Actually, right now, the number still stands at 22 cases in 11 states nationwide. They are being reported from California and Washington, Nebraska, Kentucky, and all the way out east to in New York and New Jersey. But it is likely that we will see that number grow. Now that the CDC has come out with an alert for doctors nationwide, now they know when a person comes into the emergency department after receiving Botox, if they have trouble swallowing, trouble breathing, or if they're having trouble raising their arms or their head, those are red flags. Hallie?
What about if you're going to get Botox? And look, this is not to cast aspersions on all med spas, because some of those places presumably could use actual Botox. How are you supposed to know?
So the fake product looks an awful lot like the real thing, especially to an untrained eye, but there are a few clues. Number 1, fake Botox does not come in 150 unit doses. The fake products come in those 150 unit doses. That's not the real thing. The other thing experts say is that, and perhaps this is the easiest for us to spot, if the packaging is in any language other than English. And guys, it's okay to ask your provider to see the product, to see that file, before they ever inject anything into your body. Hallie?
Is it your sense, Erica, that it took kind of a little bit for the CDC to get up and get this warning out?
Yeah, you know, we've been reporting on this for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
And the CDC told me that they've really been sort of going back and forth with their scientific advisors to get this warning out. But so far, you know, the warning remains just what we've been reporting, that doctors should be looking for these symptoms.
Erica Edwards, on top of it all, thank you so much for that. Still to come, a first-in-the-nation bill targeting line cutters at airport security. Why lawmakers are calling it a pretty clear problem in their view. Plus, what we're learning tonight about even more earthquakes rocking Taiwan. A first-in-the-nation bill is now targeting line cutters at airport security. Air quotes on line cutters. We're talking about the expedited screening company Clear that lets people pay a fee to skip the line at security once their identity is confirmed at a kiosk. You've probably seen these lines in airports, or at least the little blue sort of markers for it. We're talking about this bipartisan proposal out in California that would make Clear create its own line at airports separate from the general lane, or else it'll be banned from state airports. Let me bring in Steve Patterson now. I say line cutters like in a bit tongue-in-cheek because you pay for it. Like it's not like a rando jumping in front. Like you pay to go through Clear and then you get in front of the line. So what's the beef from lawmakers here?
The beef from specifically Josh Newman, who's this state lawmaker in California, Democrat, who, by the way, as you mentioned, has bipartisan support, which you might imagine is very rare in California.
Yeah.
The beef is specifically cutting the line, okay? The problem that they have is that people are standing in these TSA lines, you know, maybe upwards of an hour in some cases. They see people at these kiosks. These people are then escorted to the front of the line, and then they go on their flight. It just simply incensed this lawmaker who has agreement that there should be some dignity in the whole process. And their problem, again, is not with the line cutting service. Like, they've made clear that they don't want Clear to necessarily go out of business. It is specifically the act of somebody being able to cut in these general lines. So if they're able to somehow fund this and, you know, get approval from the TSA to form their own line, they're okay with that. The feasibility of something like that doesn't seem very likely. And the bill, I think, is going to face some tough opposition. Hallie?
I just I feel compelled by a moral and ethical standard to say that I am a Clear person. Like I have Clear and use Clear. Right. Like so stipulated. Yeah. Isn't the point of getting Clear, like the incentive for getting Clear is that you don't have to wait in line?
That is the point. Absolutely. 100%. I think the argument from the other side, though, is that you have PreCheck, which is its own system, which works on its own, and it doesn't force people to see you cutting in front of them in the line, is what I'm getting. And yes, you pay for the service, you pay for Clear, so it's a premium service. And I think, you know, a lot of the language that I've heard from these lawmakers, speaking to other outlets, not us, obviously, we've reached out, haven't heard anything yet, is that it's the sense of somebody having a premium service, being wealthy enough to afford it, and then sort of flaunting that as they're getting on their plane.
Right, I get that. The idea that there are different levels of service at an airport when folks should be able to have that ability. PreCheck, of course, folks have to pay for as well to get PreCheck. What's Clear saying about this?
Clear has issued a statement. We've gotten it. They say, quote, "We are proud to partner with 9 airports across California, creating hundreds of jobs, sharing more than $13 million in annual revenue with our California airport partners, and serving nearly 1 million Californians." Their argument is simply this. Look, airports have gotten used to having Clear. It's part of their process. Taking it out now would gunk up that process, but also the revenue sharing from this. These airlines get a cut of the money that they're seeing, and so ticket prices might go up if you remove Clear from the picture. Hallie?
What are the chances this spreads beyond the state where you're standing now?
I mean, you know, California is a precedent-setting state. And, you know, we've seen it for a lot of things, specifically when it comes to the environment, with travel, and certainly, you know, some of the things that the Newsom administration has done in the previous years. This could be one of those things. I think, though, this is going to face steep opposition, specifically from opposition that has deep pockets. These airliners are going to line up against this thing, right? This cuts into their business. Nobody wants that. I think the proposal has got partnering with certain union partners. TSA and flight attendants want this, but I think it's going to be very tough for it to make it out unscathed. Hallie?
Steve Patterson live for us there in California. Keep us posted. Thank you. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's a look at what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Malaysia, the Navy there says 10 people are dead after 2 military helicopters crashed into each other during training today. They were apparently practicing for a Navy celebration, which has now been canceled. There will be an investigation into what went wrong. Out of the UK, at least 5 people died while crossing the English Channel, according to French officials, happening just hours after the British Parliament approved a migrant deportation bill. Remember, the government wants to deport people who enter the country illegally from Rwanda. Human rights groups call the legislation inhumane. And out of Taiwan, 2 earthquakes shaking the country just minutes apart. I want to show you the dust clouds you're about to see rolling in because of one of those earthquakes. No injuries have been reported, but there's even more damage now to buildings that just got hit by you see that dust cloud there, by a terrible earthquake in Taiwan earlier this month. Back here at home, we told you about those pro-Palestinian protests taking over college campuses, now stretching across the country. More students from more universities now joining in as it becomes a nationwide movement among some of the younger generation. But it's not the first time something like this has happened. College campuses have been a breeding ground for social and cultural movements for decades. Valerie Castro has our breakdown.
Protests rocking campuses from coast to coast. Columbia University, ground zero, born out of decades of activism, clashing views and values.
I'm for free press, free speech, and I think college campuses are the most important place for that, and Columbia has a history of advocacy.
A history at that campus dating back to the Vietnam War. Students protesting U.S. involvement in the war and the draft seized university buildings, temporarily took a dean hostage, shutting down the school. In the end, over 100 people hurt and more than 700 arrested.
For the young people of this nation who are particularly concerned, and I understand why they are concerned about this war, I respect your idealism.
Sit-ins, encampments, marches spread to Kent State, where things turned deadly.
The trouble began when hundreds of students gathered for an anti-war demonstration.
4 killed, 9 others hurt when the Ohio National Guard opened fire. In the decades just before, mass movements of social justice and the fight for civil rights. The Greensboro sit-ins, 4 college students stand up against segregation, sparking a chain reaction and turning point for equality. An issue again at play decades later with the Black Lives Matter movement started in 2013. BLM marches popping up on campuses. A movement reignited in 2020 with the death of George Floyd, then Breonna Taylor. From the fight for feminism, a debate on gun rights, an outcry on climate change. Climate change is real. A demand for the end of apartheid regimes, America's next generation of leaders, showing that education is not just studies.
Why can't students go to college quietly, like they used to, and get an education?
But using the stage to share their voices along the way from both sides of the aisle. Valerie Castro, NBC News.
Our thanks to Valerie for that reporting. Coming up, we are joined one-on-one with our newsmaker tonight, a Republican Congresswoman. There she is, Cathy McMorris-Rodgers. More on that, what you just heard about, and plenty more coming up right after the break. Back here live to Washington now. We're up on Capitol Hill. We are waiting to see if and when the Senate could vote on this big foreign aid bill that may also end up with a TikTok ban. One of the folks who voted for it over on the House side is Republican Congresswoman from Washington, Cathy McMorris-Rodgers. She is joining us now. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Hallie. Good to be with you.
Thank you. So listen, let's take this bill in a couple of buckets here as we're looking to see what the Senate will do. We expect maybe some action on that in the next few hours, potentially. You voted for this latest aid package, as well as some others since the start of the war from Russia against Ukraine. What is your sense about the next time our allies in Ukraine might need funding? Let's say 6 months, a year down the line. Are you confident there's going to be support in your party for that?
Well, there's certainly support for Ukraine in its fight for independence, self-determination. I think many, and including me too, want to know what the long-term plan is, what victory looks like in Ukraine, as well as what kind of accountability measures are in place to ensure that the money is actually going to where it is needed. I believe that it is important that America lead with moral clarity, and part of this was helping Ukraine in its fight for self-determination and independence. It also included aid for Israel, which is our greatest, closest ally in the Middle East, and the importance of recognizing Israel's right to exist and supporting it right now during this time. And there were other provisions also in this package.
Of course, other provisions, including the potential one that could end up with a ban of TikTok here, right? We've seen TikTok now over the course of the last several months tell people, hey, get in touch with your lawmakers, protest this move, right? They're launching, and according to internal memos that we've obtained, potentially a legal fight now against this. What is your message to your constituents, probably like the Gen Z ones, who are being told right now that their elected officials are like out to get an app that they love?
TikTok will have a choice to make. The legislation raises the concerns around TikTok as a national security threat. And Republicans and Democrats agree that we need to take action to ensure that TikTok is divested from the Chinese Communist Party ultimately, because it's owned by ByteDance. We know that TikTok has repeatedly been caught in this lie that it doesn't answer to the Chinese Communist Party. But yet we also know that TikTok has been used through its parent company ByteDance to spy on Americans, to spy on journalists right now. We know that according to internal recordings by employees at TikTok that, quote, everything is seen by China. And we know that we can't trust China to protect our privacy, to protect our American values. And that's why this bill, it is TikTok's choice whether or not it remains controlled and owned by ByteDance, and would not be allowed in the United States, or if they decide to sell and under a new entity allowed to operate in the United States.
Well, all of this it may come up in the years to come down the road on the Hill, years in which you will presumably not be a member of the conference. Of course, you announced back in February you're not running for re-election. You are one of about 24 House Republicans who are either retiring at the end of the session, seeking higher office, or at least straight up stepping down. I don't have to tell you that Republicans have a razor-thin majority. The margins are just so close in the House of Representatives. Are you concerned that departures of members like you could empower the more far-right flank of your party? How do you think about that?
Well, there's a variety of reasons as to why members make these decisions. I am really proud to be the chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and we're going to make sure that we're finishing strong. I've had the honor of serving in Congress now for 10 terms, and for me, it was really a decision based upon some, a desire to be with my family more, but ultimately to finish strong as the chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done, whether it's on the TikTok bill to protect Americans from apps that are controlled by foreign adversaries, or work that I'm doing right now with Senator Cantwell on getting a national data privacy law in place to protect Americans' privacy rights, which is also really important. But I do believe that the Republicans are in a very strong position. It is a narrow majority, but there's actually more Democrats than Republicans who have announced they're not running again in the House.
I promise I'll get to the Data Privacy Act in a second, but let me just press on this point here, because you've had this long and sort of high-profile tenure in the Capitol on the House side there. Do you believe that right now there is room in your party for people like you who represent your brand of Republicanism?
Well, yes, I'm proving that even right now, being very effective as the leader of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, working on legislation that are priorities for Republicans, as well as working across the aisle, getting things done. I believe in the importance of legislating. I believe that on behalf of the American people, it's important that we are doing our jobs in the House, in the Senate, on behalf of the people. And that's the type of legislator that I've been, and I absolutely know that I've had a lot of support in my role on the committee and in the House.
And I know you're hoping to get that American Privacy Rights Act over the finish line at some point, Congresswoman. Talk through why you believe that is so important to do as one of your last acts before you leave Congress.
Yes, this has been years in the making, both in the House and the Senate, members that have been advocating for over 2 decades. Right now, there is no limit on the data that is collected on us as individuals. It can be location data, search engine history, your sensitive data, and we need to be protecting America's privacy rights online. Different states have passed laws, and oftentimes they become in conflict with one another, which makes it difficult, especially for small businesses or startups. And I'm really encouraged that we've been able to hammer out a bill that enjoys bipartisan, bicameral support during a Congress where you don't see a lot of that happening. But I think it goes to what an important moment this is and why this is a bill that needs to pass this Congress.
Congresswoman Cathy McMorris-Rodgers, thank you so much for being on the show, for chatting with us through all of these many issues facing the chamber. Really appreciate your time tonight. When we come back,
great to be with
how the future of climate change depends on the voters in half the world this year. Half the world's population casting ballots that could affect your future. We'll explain. Climate is on the ballot this year, with about half the world's population set to elect leaders. Look at this, something like 45 countries, all the ones you see in yellow, that will be holding all kinds of elections. And the people who end up in office are going to face some huge challenges in delivering on climate promises. We're talking about stuff like ending deforestation, tripling renewable energy capacity, and really cutting back on greenhouse gas emissions. Josh Letterman is joining us now. Walk us through some of the key elections around the world where climate concerns are a particularly big deal.
Yeah, Hallie, this isn't just philosophical. This really hits home in a lot of localized ways, such as in Brazil, where this is playing a major role in the election for the mayor's race in Sao Paulo, which has become kind of a proxy battle between President Lula, who is an environmentalist, has really vowed to crack down on the massive deforestation, which is a huge issue in Brazil. And on the other hand, former President Bolsonaro, who oversaw the expansion of that deforestation. And both of the candidates in that mayor's race are now trying to portray themselves as friends of the rainforest who are going to crack down on that. And this extends to the world's largest democracy, India, where more people are going to vote in the elections that are now underway than in any other country in the world. And India, a country facing extreme heat, drought, really severe effects of climate change. But it's interesting, Hallie, Prime Minister Modi, who's up for re-election, is a believer in climate change, but he has kind of made the argument that this isn't our problem to solve, because he says the U.S., other industrialized countries have polluted so much more historically that it's not really up to India, as it's in the middle of developing economically, to be limiting its own development by cracking down on fossil fuels. And we're also seeing this at play in South Africa, where the ANC, the party of Nelson Mandela, is facing its biggest threat since the end of apartheid. And in South Africa, you know, they also are facing extreme heat, drought, and climate conditions. But interestingly, one of the big critiques of the ANC is that they are too cozy with some of those energy interests, that in fact they have allowed the energy system in South Africa to be neglected, those coal plants to get way too old to be functioning. If the ANC is to lose in this election, it would likely speed up the transition in South Africa towards cleaner energies.
Josh Letterman, live for us overseas with all of that. Josh, thank you very much. Appreciate your reporting on that. That does it for us for this hour. We've got more coverage picking up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.